Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Letter of Law Interviews. My name is Sarthak, and today I am absolutely honored, thrilled, and so delighted to be in conversation with an extremely special guest. We have with us today Nayanika ma'am, and ma'am is joining us all the way from New York. Ma'am is a corporate lawyer, and she has had a career trajectory that many aspiring corporate lawyers want to emulate. Ma'am worked in a tier one law firm in India, AZB and Partners, for more than 2 years. Thereafter, she obtained her LLM from Columbia Law School, after which ma'am was admitted to the coveted New York bar and has been working in a New York based law firm ever since. So, in today's episode, we'll try to talk to ma'am about her experiences, and I'm sure that our viewers who wish to practice in the USA will find a lot of insights. So, ma'am, first of all, thank you so much for taking out the time and joining me all the way from USA.
Thank you so much, Sarthak. I think it's an honor to be here, to be very honest, I was very excited when we earlier spoke about, having this session and, I was looking forward to it. So thank you so much for having me here. Um, I'll give you like a brief introduction about myself. And I mean, you've anyways told everything about me in like a very small, snapshot. But yes, so I got my law degree from Symbiosis in India, and then I started working at AZB and Partners in Mumbai. I was a part of their corporate team, so I did mergers and acquisitions and private equity primarily. I was there for about 2.5 years. And then I moved to Columbia Law School. Like I just came here for my LLM. After which I was fortunate enough to get a job here at Wilkie Farr. So I'm a third year associate currently at Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, and I am in their corporate practice doing M&A and private equity.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And I'm so excited to talk about all that. But before that, ma'am, since you've always been a transactional lawyer, I mean, suddenly a question comes to my mind. I litigate, and in the corridors of courtrooms, we offer here that transactional lawyers aren't real lawyers. I wonder what's your opinion on that.
I 100% agree, to be honest.
Really?
I actually agree. I mean, we are lawyers for sure. I mean, but the kind of law we do is very different from what a litigator does. We most definitely don't go to the court to argue matters and, to present our case. We are representing companies. We are making the rich richer by, uh, helping them with like mergers or acquisitions or like investments. So in that sense, sure, we don't go to the court. So we're not like that atypical lawyer who goes to the court, wears that cloak and then argues in front of the judge. But we represent companies and we do like transactional law or business law. So in that sense, yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, I think very early on, I was very sure that I litigation is not my cup of tea. Like this is something which I don't want to pursue, though I feel like I like given the had I had the opportunity to kind of, maybe practice alongside like senior advocates and, like even visit the courts to kind of see how the litigation practice really plays out, I would have definitely like, maybe considered pursuing it. But because I did a lot of corporate internships very early on, back in law school, I felt like corporate law is something which excited me more.
That's great.
So
The litigation lost a gem, but corporate law gained one by your decisions. And I'm sure our viewers will find a lot of valuable insights from what we're about to discuss now. So, ma'am, diving right in, uh, was it always a part of your plan to practice law in a foreign jurisdiction, or did it happen somewhere when you were in law school or when you were practicing in AZB?
that's actually a great question. So, to be honest, it was not like a very, like, it was not an early decision for me to kind of move to the US or, like pursue a master's degree in law to kind of get more international exposure. That actually, I thought about it while I was practicing law at AZB when I realized that the kind of matters I was doing were very India centric. So I was doing like an India leg of like a global transaction or like a global matter. So if there was a cross border merger or there was a global acquisition where you had like the bigger private equity firms based out of the US investing in like another entity which had an Indian subsidiary. So I was just doing like the Indian sub part of that transaction, which is when I realized that, I want to do like, I want to be a part of the bigger picture in that sense. Like, I want to do the global transaction. I want to be a part of that, and I want to know how it feels, like it's not like we're doing something which is extremely different. It's obviously jurisdiction specific because we're advising like the international councils or lawyers on like, the Indian aspect of the matter. But I wanted to be a part of that global aspect as well, which is when I thought that maybe, if I do a master's in the US, it'll give me that global exposure. And, if I end up getting a job, which I did, I will experience I will experience like a global transaction where I'm a part of an international cross-border matter, where I'm not only doing the Indian leg of the deal, but like leading like different legs of that big matter. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, ma'am, I mean, how did you decide on the USA? Because when we see people moving out to practice, there are a lot of options, right? There's UK and US, obviously, which are the most popular ones. Singapore and New Zealand are also quickly becoming popular destination. I mean, what was your thinking behind going specifically to the US?
I think US for me was a very obvious decision, I would want to say, because New York is like the financial hub of the world, right? Like all the big financial institutions, private equity investors, hedge funds, like all these big players are primarily based out of New York and the US. So for me, when I got into corporate law, when I did M&A, the kind of clients we used to deal with, which were, big MNCs or like big private equity funds, they were all like essentially from New York or like, somewhere in the US, which is why I was like, I want to be right at the heart of this entire, uh, corporate world, which I feel New York is. So it was a very obvious decision for me when I chose New York and the US to pursue my master's.
Wonderful. And ma'am, you moved to the USA to pursue your LLM after considerable work experience working in a top law firm in India. I'm just wondering, what was it like to be a student all over again after practicing law at the highest levels? What was it like? What the experience?
To be honest, I think I was actually looking forward to it. I was excited to go back to like law school and, like become a student again, because it was a different jurisdiction. I actually wanted to know, I was curious to know what is it that is different because before I moved to the US, I spoke to a lot of people and they always said that the corporate skill set is pretty much transferable. Like you can, whatever you do in India as part of your work experience, you it's not the same, but like it's very similar in terms of what you do because it's a transaction, right? So your transaction structure could be a little different, but like the transaction documentation and everything is pretty much the same because you have these global cross-border international mergers and acquisitions happening, which have kind of, streamlined the entire structure and like the entire process in a certain way. So I was excited. I was actually looking forward to becoming a student again because it was Columbia. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna really interact with like, distinguished professors and like, great faculty and even like international students from all over the world. And getting a master's here requires you to have like a little bit of work experience before you apply. So that was interesting because I wanted to interact with like a lot of lawyers, international lawyers with like, experience from like different countries, which I got the opportunity honestly to do, which was great, which was honestly amazing because, we were all like-minded in terms of like what we want and, like what we do, but we were like from different backgrounds. And that was like a good
Yeah.
exposure in terms of, like how the legal system differs in like different countries and what kind of work they do, how is it different. It was a great networking platform. I honestly feel like I am pretty social. But so getting that opportunity right there, to go back to law school, and in like a different jurisdiction, in a different setting, and meeting like new people was something which I was looking forward to. One thing which really attracted me towards pursuing the LLM and also being extremely excited about it was their experiential learning classes, like where you had like these partners from like big law firms in the US, in New York, come and like give you like lectures, or like take classes or courses which are specific to like a particular area of law. So for instance, for corporate law, I took a course on private equity, which was taught by partners from Goodwin.
Wow.
It's like a big law firm here in New York. So that was quite nice because that gave you like a hands-on experience on like how the transaction and how like corporate matters really play out here in New York. Because they used to get like precedent of different like term sheets, transaction documents, and they used to ask you to like mark it up, or ask you to like draft things or like negotiate things. So it was like an experiential learning. So I think that was extremely valuable. And that was something which I already knew about before I applied to Columbia. And I was very excited to be a part of that. So
That's
yeah.
wonderful, ma'am, because one of the criticisms of Indian law schools is that they are very theoretical and don't really train their students on the practical aspects. So, I mean, you feel that your experience in Colombia, the LLM experience, was good enough in terms of practical learnings as well?
Absolutely, like 100%. Like there, I could see a significant difference in terms of like the way they, you know, they taught us like different concepts. It was definitely more practical. It was more engaging, more interactive. Like you had to study before, you had to like prep before, you came for your class, because they used to have like cold calling. So you were expected to kind of, know the answers. You were expected to like yeah, like give answers or like just understand the concept. So the understanding actually came before you even stepped into the class, which is pretty cool, which is very different, right? Because back like in India, I believe that was not like the case everywhere. Like
Correct.
you were learning in the classroom, and then you were expected to go back and whatever revise or like brush your skills or technical skills up. So that was different. And yes, a lot of practical application of like whatever learnings you've had in class was there. Like uh not only did we have like exams, even if those were like open book exams, the kind of questions that we had really challenged you and forced you to apply your mind and think through a lot of concepts which you may have studied, but it's not like there in the book.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, when you were pursuing your LLM, was it always part of the plan to appear for the New York bar, or did you plan to take the entrance test at a later point? What was your thinking like with regard to the bar exam?
So if you obviously, if you get a job here in the US, if you're working for a big law firm or any law firm, they would expect you to clear the New York
I see.
bar exam before you start working, or during the course of like your first year at the firm. That is like the basic expectation that they have. It's always mostly there in your offer letter. So I got my job early on, like in my first semester at
Wow.
Columbia, which is why it was a given that I have to like give like my New York, I have to take the New York bar exam and I have to give the exam. Uh, but irrespective, had I not gotten a job, like I think for me, the plan of action was always to give the New York bar exam, because I've come here, I've studied here for a year. It's obviously great to be duly qualified. So, you've passed the bar back in India, you're qualified to practice in India, and it's always an honor to always like qualify here in New York, and also practice here if given an opportunity. So I was very sure that I would give the bar regardless.
Wow, ma'am, I'd like to rewind a little and go back to where you said that you got the job in your first semester
Yeah.
at Columbia. That's incredible because I've heard a lot of people who complete their LLMs get admitted or get called to the bar and still are unable to secure a job. So, what was your experience like, ma'am? How did you secure a job right in your first semester of LLM?
I think I will definitely say that the markets do matter. Like, the year in which you do your LLM, the year in which you graduate, and the year in which you're looking to kind of obtain a job. So for me, I will say that the markets at that point when I was when I started my LLM were great, were definitely better because it was right out of COVID. So everyone was kind of coming back, and, like getting back in that zone of like working and, coming into office and all of that. But yes, I would say that the entire job hunting process is something which takes up a lot of time. It does take up a lot of, I want to say your mental peace, because you're constantly at it throughout the entire course of your LLM. Uh, in terms of like things which I did, which really helped me, and I would highly like recommend students who are, pursuing their LLM to kind of do when if they're seeking for a job here in New York, is networking. I think everyone says this and everyone has heard this a multiple, like 100 times, that networking is absolutely key in terms of finding a job here. But how you network, um, you know, whether it's the right way, or what way to kind of choose and navigate, is something which uh, I think you need to understand like what works best for you, but you need to like try everything from cold emailing to reaching out to people through LinkedIn, and most definitely attending all kinds of networking events. So another reason why, doing a master's here in the US is great, because they give you like at Columbia, we had great networking opportunities. Like there was a networking event almost every week, multiple events every week, but like you could definitely make it to one or two every week, where they had partners from like different law firms, associates from different law firms, uh, attending those events. And very, they were very friendly and they're very keen on interacting with everyone, and, giving them guidance about how to approach, the right person at the firm, or, how to like what to expect, as a big law attorney. So it was a great platform, like, going to these events, interacting with people, then following up with them through LinkedIn, or just even sending them an email. I think I've seen like a lot of students are very hesitant to kind of send out an email. Even if it's a cold email, they'll just be like, what if the partner or the HR does not respond? uh, but I think that is not the correct approach, because it's like until and unless you don't try, you don't know.
Hmm.
So it's worth giving it a shot, and it's okay. You don't have to have an expectation that the partner would respond, but you'll be surprised.
Right.
There are a lot of partners who do end up responding, who do end up, like connecting you to the right team or like the right person at the firm. So it also obviously depends on the demand and supply, like the market demand of whether the firm is hiring or recruiting and how the market is. But like you'll still have to give in your best. You have to do what you have to do. You have to keep trying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's how I went about it.
That's great. Ma'am, a few questions and I'll try to take them step by step. It's incredible how you were explaining, and that's very useful. Ma'am, first of all, what is the legal market like in USA? Because we understand that in India, there are a few tier one law firms which can really pay the kind of salaries that the law students want. Other than that, there are various boutique firms and then there are law chambers. What's it like in the USA? Are there only firms? And if there are only firms, are there enough to sort of accommodate everyone, or are there also solo practitioners, litigators that people can join in? Can you just briefly talk about your experience of perceiving the US legal market?
Sure. So I want to say that the US legal market has been opening up in the past few years. If you see the trend, like 5 years back, we didn't have that many Indian students who pursued a master's in the US, procuring a job. But now I think the trend is that people do end up finding, I'm not saying everyone does, but quite a few people do end up finding a job for themselves. Uh, I am not sure how the litigation aspect of this works. Like, I know I have a friend who got a job at a law firm in the litigation team. So that was amazing because, uh, I feel like here the US lawyers are obviously keen on hiring the JDs, and especially in the litigation department, because they have like more number of years which they've devoted to kind of study like, the law here in the
And
US,
procedure as well for litigation.
procedure and everything. Yeah. So they have like more knowledge about this. So they're more keen on like hiring the JDs for that. But because I have a friend who got a job in the litigation team, so I don't want to say that it's not possible. It's very
Wow.
much possible. But for the corporate, for the corporate teams and like for the transactional practice, I do believe that people do end up getting jobs at like different big law firms, even like mid-tier law firms, or like the smaller firms, as well as even in-house opportunities.
Oh, yes.
Though I would say that the in-house opportunities do kick in slightly later at a later stage in life, where maybe you've worked at a firm for like 2, 3 years and then you go in-house. But I do know a lot of people who have also managed to get like an in-house opportunity as a legal consultant or a legal associate in a compliance team at like a few like I want to say MNCs or banks. So that is definitely there. So in terms of the trend which I've seen, like I said, it really depends on that year. If that year is great, the market is great. Um, Obviously hiring opportunities will be more,
Hmm.
but if the market is not doing that well, there is a scarcity of jobs,
I
at
am.
least in legal field. Yeah.
Ma'am, another thing, you came from India with an experience in hardcore transactional work where you were doing M&A and private equity. So naturally, these are transferable skills which can be reproduced in a foreign firm. But let's say someone comes from either a disputes team of a law firm or from a litigation background where these skills aren't really transferable. So how should, I mean, are these people still at a similar footing? Will they also find, I mean, jobs, or is it going to be difficult for them? What's that situation like?
So, like you rightly said, for corporate, it's definitely it's I would say it's not a given, but it's easier to kind of transition into like a different jurisdiction and start working at a law firm in the corporate department. It's comparatively easier. What I have seen is that, my friends who were at Columbia with me and who were, pursuing litigation or disputes found it a little more difficult in terms of finding jobs within the disputes field. It's not impossible. Obviously, there have been instances where students have gotten a job in the disputes team itself, but it's a little challenging because litigation is most definitely jurisdiction specific. Obviously, if you're like an international disputes lawyer, you've done international dispute resolution and all of that. I think I mean, you can still market yourself better because then you can justify the international footing you would have if you work at a law firm in New York. But while I would say that the job opportunities become a little limited, they're still there. Obviously, you might have like a lot of experience from India. You might, there are people who work for like 10 years, 8 years, 5 years in the litigation field. They might have to start from scratch here as a first year because they sort of discount the number of years you've worked in India. That's not always the case, but I think mostly people do start off as a first year because for them, you're starting afresh, right? Um, it's a new jurisdiction, everything's new for you, new laws, everything is just fresh. Um, so yeah, I think that's something which I have observed. But again, I would say that everyone should try.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, you'll be surprised by the results you might actually get if you try. And also, I would say that people really appreciate like talking to like students and like talking to people who are interested in like knowing about their work experience, about how they made it to where they are. So people are very friendly here. Everyone's always, up for like a coffee chat or like a phone call, and they're very responsive. So I believe like every student should like make the most of that, like take that as an opportunity, grab it as an opportunity, arrange and like schedule as many coffee chats as possible, or like just reach out to people. Like, just it's okay if they don't respond, it's okay to get rejected. That's just a part of life. But you will hear a lot about how, from like how you will hear a lot about um these partners or these like associates you reach out to, like how they made it to a big law and about their experience at a big law, which will be helpful, which will give you like more insight in terms of like how to approach things and like to decide what works best for you. So
That's
yeah.
Thanks for painting a really encouraging and hopeful picture because otherwise it's very discouraging from what you get to hear and read on the internet. One of a point of the negativities about the US legal market that I often read is something that I want to put to you and get your insight on that, ma'am. Uh, One often feels that when it comes to hiring, US law firms will obviously have more incentive to hire their JDs or their undergrad law grads as opposed to LLMs who've just spent 1 year studying law in the USA. So, what is it like, ma'am, competing for jobs with lawyers who are graduating in the USA?
That's actually very true. And that's exactly how it is. You're competing not only with like thousand other international lawyers, but you're also competing with like a million other JDs who also want to work at a big law. And that's the whole point, because JD is like a longer 3-year course, and a lot of students have like a big student debt which they want to clear, and they want to kind of get a job at a big law. So that's very true. And I would say that what really makes you stand out, at least how I approached this when I was interviewing for my job, was that you have to market your experience, like that one thing which makes you stand out, and that makes you different from a JD is your experience, right? Because when you come for an LLM here in the US, you need to have certain number of years of like work especially like I think Columbia has a prerequisite to like for you to have like some work uh, and I'm sure other like T14 or T12 law schools do too. So if you have a little bit of work experience in a particular field, that is something which will help you market yourself better, because while the JDs have maybe more number of uh like they spent more time studying and like learning the law here in the US, you've actually applied like you've been in a similar situation where you worked at a law firm, so like what it is like to work at a law firm, how the hours are, what the expectations are, what kind of work you can do. And I believe like a lot of people who've like worked previously, like in their own like home country, they also want to apply for jobs in the same field in which they worked, unless obviously someone is looking to kind of transition from say litigation to corporate. Now that's a separate story. But if like if like when I did corporate law, I was very sure that when I come to New York, I want to just do corporate law. Like I will not do maybe capital markets, or I will not do litigation.
Yeah.
So it was easier for me to market myself in a way where I told them about my experience and what I was bringing to the table, and how that was maybe more valuable, or if not less, but like equivalent to what they would maybe get from a JD. I actually don't want to say equivalent, definitely more, because um I know how it is to work at a law firm, right? And that's what they want to know. They want to know whether you're a fit,
Yeah.
whether you're the right fit. And to kind of justify whether you're right fit, you have to tell them that, this is the kind of experience I've had, and this is exactly what you want me to do here as well. And because I have that experience, it's going to be easy for me to transition, and like hope like perform better.
Yeah.
So that's something.
So that's an incredibly honest answer, ma'am. Thank you so much for being so candid. Ma'am, the next part is regarding the bar examination. And whenever I speak with people who have written the New York bar exam, it's always a traumatic experience. Can you give us firstly a brief outline of what exactly is the New York bar? What is it that they test you on, and then your own experience of studying, writing the exam, taking it, and then finally the feeling of successfully clearing it.
Honestly, I was dreading this question. Like I was expecting you to ask me this, and I was just dreading it. Like I was just like, I don't want you to ask me this, because it was definitely a traumatic experience. Um, no, but I think jokes apart, New York bar is I don't want to say it's difficult or it's tough in terms of its substance. It's just challenging because you have a limited number of like hours to like answer a lot many questions, and there is a lot to study. Like the course material is huge. So it's actually a test of like time management, and like um just maybe cramming like a lot of things and applying them in like MCQs or like different kind of like MBE questions. So I'll tell you how it's structured. So the New York bar, so to qualify and to as an attorney here in New York, you have to first give the New York bar, which consists of your MBE, which is a multiple choice question based on like certain number of subjects that you'll have to prepare for. So, you take like a bar course and they have like videos and they have a lot of course material, like books that you need to study. And then you need to practice a lot of practice questions. You practice, practice, practice. Then they also have an MEE. So MEE is basically your essay writing. It's not an essay, but like they have like short essays which you have to write within again like a limited
Wow.
time period. So for that you have like certain different subjects which you also need to kind of read through, and they can question you from any of these subjects. So the number of subjects are also a lot. The course material is a lot, so there's a lot to study, and this and the questions can come from anywhere, which is why you can't really expect like a trend or a pattern. Obviously there are like people who kind of uh you know give you like the course materials will give you an outline of like things which are most tested, highly tested based on like the past questions and like the past year exams. But I feel like it's not difficult. It's just something which is a little challenging, which you need to like work your way through. Yeah,
Wow.
and it's very doable. It's very doable. You just have to be at it. You have to be focused, and you have to, uh, just it's just doable, is what I say. But the experience is a little traumatic.
Yeah.
At least it was for me.
And what was it like? Would you like to talk a little about it? I mean, what did your days look like when you were preparing for the exam? Also,
Yeah,
because I feel like I'm so sorry. I want to just follow up because I'm sure that LLMs get very little time to prepare for the bar because, firstly, I suppose there's the LLM coursework that's going on. And once you're free from that, I'm sure the bar exam is scheduled within a very short span of time. So, how did you manage that and then successfully write the exam?
it's a I think the time frame is not that short. They give you
I see.
around 1.5 months. Like if you graduate
That enough?
around mid-May, and then the exam is, I think the exam mostly happens during the last week of July.
Okay.
I mean, it is sufficient. Like I took about a month to prepare for it and I cleared it. And if I can do it, I feel anyone can do it. Trust me, believe me. I don't think so. The time period is less. It's about how you manage your time well. Like you can definitely finish all the course materials within a span of 4 to 6 weeks, and with like a proper routine, which you can prepare, like set for your own self. But before I get into my entire experience, I also want to say that there are two other exams. One is the MPRE and one is the NYLE, which you need to give before. So once you pass the New York bar exam, you can give the MPRE and NYLE at any point of time. You don't have to wait to give the bar exam. You can give it before that, you can give it after that. And once you clear all these three exams is when you will be admitted
I
to the New York bar. Yeah.
see.
So, in terms of how my day used to look like when I was preparing for the bar exam, um, honestly, I used to have a routine. Like every morning, I used to get up at like 7 a.m. and, start my day early by reading through like just like initially I started watching all the videos and I used to like make notes or like mark things alongside while watching the videos. And after that I realized that it's important for me to read and practice the questions. Practice is the key. Like you have to practice the questions, and it's very similar to the competitive exams we've given back in India, like CLAT or like
Right.
your EdSat. It's very similar to that, so you have to keep practicing. So reading through the materials early in the morning, because I'm a morning person and I feel like I retain better if I, read up things or, cram things in the morning. So that's what I used to do. And then I used to practice the questions throughout the day. And towards the very end, like as once I started, once I was closer to the exam dates, I was just practicing. Like for 8 to 10 hours, I was just practicing questions from like different course materials, not only the ones which I enrolled for, but like, you have Adapti Bar or you have like other companies which offer like past questionnaires and like similar questionnaire questions as past exams. So that gives you like the hang of like, understanding what kind of questions you can expect. And eventually you'll start seeing that you'll start scoring well, and you'll kind of, figure your way out. Like you'll understand questions, you'll understand what to expect. And I think that's just how to go about it. But having a routine is extremely important, and that's what I had. Like I for that 1 month, I barely stepped out. Like the only time I used to step out is when I used to just go for an evening walk, like a brisk walk, to just get some fresh air. And like, because if you're sitting at home starting for hours, it just gets to you. And I used to just like step out, go for a walk, listen to some music, come back. So that was like my only time I used to step out. But that was just for 1 month.
Hmm.
uh, but I was definitely at it. And I gave myself one Sunday where I used to study only for like half a day, and the other half was was for different activities inside the house. Like I used to like either watch a nice movie or
Hmm.
like treat myself to like a nice meal, but just, like a very relaxing, resting time.
Wow,
Me too.
sounds really rigorous, ma'am, and congratulations on finding success at the end of the road.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, ma'am, coming to my next question, you've worked in top law firms in India, and now you're working at a top law firm in New York. What kind of differences do you see in the work culture in Indian law firms as compared to law firms based out of US?
Just drawing parallels from like my work experience in India vis-a-vis in the US. I think the work here is more interesting because you're doing like the main deal work. uh they also give you a lot of exposure early on, which is amazing. Like as a first or a second year, I think you not only are you listening in into the negotiations, but if you kind of go, I think if you go and ask the partners, if you go and ask your teammates that you want more responsibility, you want to start drafting, they will let you take that lead. They'll be
Wow.
like, okay, why don't you just prepare like the first draft and take a stab at it, and then obviously, we'll revise it and review it. So that is also great. I think the opportunities here are more in terms of like uh doing more work, learning more. Uh, there is definitely an open door policy, which I think now the Indian firms also have that. But here in its true sense, I feel that that is the case because you can, like, the partners, the seniors are very approachable. It's not like you don't have, while you have that unsaid hierarchy, obviously, because someone's a partner, someone's a senior associate, you don't feel like you're interacting with a partner. If you It's genuinely an open door policy. You just walk into their cabin or like their cubicle, and you can like talk with them for hours. And it's not only limited to like professional work. You can talk to them about anything, and everyone's like so responsive and so like um friendly. So I think that's also something which is important because that just shows that the culture here is more open, more free. And yeah, like I said, I think that's essentially the kind of difference I've seen.
Incredible. Ma'am, another connected question to what you were talking about in terms of the quality of work in law firms. What is your quality of life as a corporate lawyer in USA? Because one word that sort of floats around a lot when we talk of Indian law firms is toxic. I wonder how much of that corresponds to law firms in the USA and what has your experience been?
So within the law firm, okay, I think that's a great question because so far I haven't really witnessed any toxicity at my firm. And that's not me praising my firm. I think that's generally the culture here. Again, maybe because, like I said previously, the culture here is very friendly, very open, very free. So the expectations are very clear. You're expected to be professional, you're expected to be curious, you're expected to do a good job. And that's it. And people are understanding and people are very approachable. So I feel like that sort of eliminates toxicity. While I don't want to say there's no toxicity, I maybe there is a little bit as you climb up the ladder, like, once you're in that zone of like becoming a partner. I don't know how it is. Uh, but obviously I'll tell you once if at all I make it there. But as of now, as a junior associate, I don't think I mean, I haven't witnessed a lot of toxicity at my law firm. And I do want to say that I think it really depends on the kind of people you're working with. Like if you're working with uh someone who inherently is a little toxic in terms of his or her approach to work, then it might obviously slip into your life, your professional working life as well. But I feel, and by God's grace, maybe I've just been fortunate enough to be working with like nice people or understanding. And I haven't really come across anyone so far who has displayed like any sort of a toxic trait. People are generally very approachable and very kind. As long as you're genuine, as long as you're doing your job and you're doing a good job, I think that's what matters and that's what the expectation is.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Also, ma'am, I mean, you're living in New York, so one has to ask, how is life like in New York? Forget being a lawyer. I mean, what are some things you do for fun out there, and what's your entire experience been?
I honestly love living in New York. Like, I think New York has been a dream city ever since I was a kid. Like, I watched Friends and I was like, this is the place I really want to be.
So much culture.
100%. Um, in terms of, so obviously the work life is a little hectic, especially when you're closing a transaction, you're signing a matter. Things get a little intense where you're expected to kind of, be working late hours. However, like once that's done, or once you have the weekend or like a holiday and the workload is like not that much, I actually do a lot of things. So I love watching theater in Broadway. So I always make it a point to go and watch like some new theater or
Mm.
something which is new on the on Broadway. And then you have like different activities happening in the city. There like just millions and millions of activities happening at the same time that it's just impossible to track them all. But like as soon as I come across something like, it could be as simple as a cooking class, like a pasta making class, or like a sip and paint, which is happening somewhere. Or even like just going for a sundowner and just chilling and, like, going out with friends or going to Central Park or like, Governor's Island for like a small impromptu concert. So there's just like so much that happens in the city constantly at all times that you always have something to either do or look forward to. So that's something which keeps me motivated and, keeps me going because then, if I'm working through the week, like for the entire week, then I'm just looking forward to the weekend. And if I don't have like a lot of weekend work, then I'll be like, okay, what is it that I can do today? And there'll be like a million things happening in New York, like even as simple as like a yoga class um, at the edge, which is basically an observatory, deck, and they do it out there in the open. So you can see the entire Manhattan, sort of, the skyline and the city, and you're doing yoga out there in the morning. That's also pretty cool. Or you have like a like a movie night at Bryant Park. So they, set up this big screen and, people come and chill. They get their own mats and food and, like a small picnic spot for you, your
Wow.
friends or your family, and you're watching a movie and they have like a schedule of different movies which run through for the entire summer. So that's pretty cool. So these are just like examples of things which you can do in the city at
Yeah.
any point.
That's wonderful. I mean, ma'am, you were absolutely right. I mean, all of us grow up consuming so much culture around New York, friends, and then other books, movies, songs. So to be in that city must be a whole different experience. So, ma'am, since we're coming to an end of our conversation, I'll quickly come to my final question. So, ma'am, drawing on your experiences, would you like to say something to our viewers who are thinking of transitioning to working in the USA? Any words of advice, caution, or wisdom that you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, of course. I think I would want like all the students to make a conscious decision when they do think of, pursuing an LLM because while it might seem that, it's possible and I've spoken positively about, maybe finding a job and trying to find one, it does come with a little bit of financial burden because doing an LLM here in the US is not inexpensive. you have to obviously have the finances to support you. It is expensive without any guarantee of getting a job. So, when you make that decision, when you make that call, you should be comfortable to pursue an LLM, knowing that there could be a possibility where you don't get a job and you may have to come back. So you need to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Secondly, your motivation to do an LLM or like a master's in the US should not be just to find a job, but to also learn like the laws of, this jurisdiction. If you've chosen US, then like how it is to kind of work here, like what it is to kind of study here in the US, about the US laws. Like you're coming here for a purpose. It's not only to get a job, but to also learn and grow as a lawyer, right? I mean, if you're getting more exposure to the laws of a different jurisdiction, that's just going to like help you grow. Um, so it also gives you a great opportunity to network with people, and you also have enough ample number of opportunities and enough time to party and like do like different activities while you're studying, because you're a student again, so you have that free time as well. So your goals and your motivation should be aligned. And once you come here, please do reach out to as many people as you can. Networking is definitely like, a lot of people tell you network, 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 but then I think a lot of students end up spending a lot of time just figuring out what kind of networking they want to do. Or, I don't want to say they give up, but a lot of students just feel that if they do not hear back from people they were expecting to kind of, reach out to and, start a conversation with, they get discouraged or demotivated to kind of, continue the entire networking spree. So that should not be discouraging. It is challenging. It is definitely challenging. It is not easy to find a job here, but I would say it's not impossible.
Right.
So it's a very informed decision for you to come here, do an LLM, and then find a job. It will be challenging, but it's all on you. So, feel free to reach out to people. Everyone is very friendly, very helpful, and at the end of the day, do what you think is right.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking the time out and speaking with me. I think with this, we can wrap up our conversation today. It was most insightful. I got to learn a lot. And thank you so very much for joining me all the way from New York, taking time out of your schedule and speaking with me.
No, thank you so much, Sarthak. I honestly like, I feel great to be here. And I just feel great that if whatever knowledge I have, or whatever insights I have, if they can like help the students out there, or people is kind of aspiring to like move to the US or work here or do an LLM, um, it'll be great for me. Like it'll be great for them to like, maybe reach out if they have any questions, like happy to answer them. And thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank,
It's been great. Thank you.
thank you.